Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we tackle some of the big issues shaping our world, trying to make sense of them for you. Imagine this. You're a photographer. You've just nailed a fantastic shot, maybe in Paris. You put it online, feeling good about it, and then bam! Suddenly you're caught in this legal tug of war. Laws from different continents pulling you in opposite directions. It's a real thing happening to creators right now. And today, we're going to unpack that for you. Our mission here is to look at this tricky situation. Global photography, U.S. legal stuff, European privacy rules, and, crucially, getting model consent right. We want to help you understand the clashes, but also explore a really smart new solution that aims to make things fair and clear for everyone.
Exactly. We've looked at quite a bit of material on this global photographer's dilemma, as it's being called. And it's not just, theory. It's a real clash, especially between a U.S. law, 2257, and Europe's GDPR. What's really striking is how sharing a photo online, something that seems so simple, has become, as our sources put it, this labyrinthine set of legal obligations.
Yeah.
It's because of digital reach, right? It impacts the creators, the platforms they use, and really importantly, people's privacy.
Okay, right. So let's take into that first piece then. This 2257 mandate, for anyone not familiar, it's a U.S. regulation, Title 18, USC, Section 2257. And its original goal was absolutely vital, fighting the exploitation of minors. Really important stuff.
Yeah, totally. A noble goal. And to do that, the law says that anyone producing content could be a photographer, a big studio, anyone virtual way. They have to keep detailed records. Proof of identity, proof of age for every single person in the images or videos. So for photographers, that means, practically speaking, you need a copy of a model's government photo ID, like a passport or driver's license. How to verify they're definitely over 18.
Right.
And on top of that, you need clear proof they consented to the shoot itself.
You got to keep all this.
Keep it on file, right? And here's where it gets kind of wild, the global reach. It's not just if you're in the U.S. If your photo, your video ends up on any website or platform accessible in the U.S., then you, wherever you are, Helsinki, Sydney, Santiago, it doesn't matter. You're expected to follow this U.S. law. Your server could be in Germany. But if Americans can see the content, you're under its rules.
Yeah.
That's huge. It is. It's incredibly broad. And while, everyone agrees with the why behind 2257 protecting kids is non-negotiable. The way it's applied now, globally, has turned into what sources call a logistical and legal minefield for creators outside the U.S. Just think about it. A fashion photographer in Italy shooting for a local brand, suddenly they need these complex U.S.-style records, maybe just because that brand's website might be seen by someone in the States. It adds this massive administrative layer. And, storing copies of government IDs, that's a security issue in itself. It's a classic case of good intentions meeting the messy reality of the internet.
Okay, so you've got this strong U.S. rule pushing photographers everywhere to collect and hold on to really sensitive personal info. But then, boom, that runs smack into a completely different way of thinking about data, a privacy-first approach. And that's where Europe's GDPR comes in, right?
Okay.
Creating this incredibly difficult balancing act.
Yeah, this is where the privacy wall really goes up. And it's not just Europe anymore, though. GDPR kind of set the standard. We're seeing similar tough privacy laws pop up globally. California, Brazil, lots of places. GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, basically puts really tight controls on handling personally identifiable information, PII. Now, PII in this context, well, that government ID that 2257 demands, it's packed with PII. A treasure trove, as one source called it. We're talking name, birth date, address, ID numbers, even biometric data from the photo. Super sensitive stuff. If that leaks, it could be disastrous for the model. Identity theft, fraud, you name it. And under GDPR, honestly, a typical freelance photographer or even a small studio, they're generally not equipped legally or technically to be a secure data processor for that kind of info. It takes serious resources, serious expertise. Plus, GDPR has these core ideas like data minimization, only collect what you absolutely need, and purpose limitation, only use it for the reason you collected it. 2257 seems to challenge both. Do you really need the whole ID just for H-check? Maybe not. And you definitely can't just start using that ID info for other things later. It creates this direct, almost impossible conflict.
Right. So it's not just having the data, it's everything you do with it.
Yeah.
And thinking about GDPR, what about the right to be forgotten? If an EU citizen model says, hey, delete my ID copy, but 2257 says you have to keep it, what does the photographer do then? They're stuck, aren't they?
Exactly. That's a perfect example of the legal deadlock. You literally can't comply with both laws in that scenario. And the risks here are enormous. A data breach under GDPR, fines can be crippling. We're talking millions potentially. Up to 4% of global revenue. And it's not just breaches. Just handling the data improperly, even if it doesn't leak, can trigger big penalties. Plus, think about the reputational hit. If you're known for mishandling model data, that's devastating. So asking photographers to collect IDs, store them, maybe share them with platforms, it's not just a slippery slope like the source says. It's asking them to stand between two legal giants throwing punches.
Wow. So the choice becomes follow U.S. law to get your work seen globally, but risk massive GDPR fines and backlash. Or follow GDPR, protect privacy, but potentially get locked out of huge markets because platforms demand 2257 compliance. That's more than a slippery slope. That feels like a cliff edge for creators. Okay, so we have these huge international law clashes. But there's another problem closer to home, right? Something fundamental about how consent itself is usually handled, the standard model release form. You're saying that has its own issues.
Oh, absolutely. It's a critical piece often overlooked in the bigger legal picture, the traditional model release. It's usually a pretty generic contract, right? The model signs off, gives rights to use their likeness from that specific photo shoot. But here's the kicker, the crucial missing link. That release is almost never tied to specific photos or specific videos. It's a blanket permission for the whole session. Maybe it says for commercial use, but it's broad. And that lack of detail creates this dangerous ambiguity. It leads directly to these he said, she said situations. Think about it. A model does a lifestyle shoot, signs the standard release. Cool. But later, the photographer licenses one specific photo from that shoot. Maybe it's more revealing or just has a certain expression. And it gets used in a campaign the model really dislikes or feels misrepresents them. With only that generic release, the model can totally argue, yeah, I agreed to the shoot, but I never agreed for that photo to be used that way.
And the photographer has no specific proof for that image.
Exactly. They're left hanging. They might face takedown demands, maybe even get sued. And honestly, when there's doubt about consent for someone's image, the law often leans towards protecting the individual, the model, which is fair. But it puts the photographer in a really tough spot legally and financially. They might have to pull whole campaigns. It erodes trust. It's a system that, even with good intentions, just leaves too much gray area. It doesn't really serve either side well when it comes to certainty.
Yeah, it sounds like it breeds conflict, even when nobody's trying to be difficult. Protecting models, making sure they control their image, that's got to be paramount. But if the tool you're using, the release form, is fuzzy, it doesn't give the model or the photographer real clarity. A lose-lose, like you said. Okay, so photographers caught between laws, wrestling with vague consent forms. It sounds pretty bleak. Is there a way out of this mess? Can technology actually help bring some clarity, some fairness here? And that's where this thing called BentID comes in, right? It was basically built to solve these exact problems.
Precisely. BentID is presented as a suite of tools designed to build a more transparent and accountable ecosystem. It's really a ground-up rethink, looking at these specific pain points, compliance, privacy, consent, clarity, and using tech to address them. It's not just patching holes. It's trying to create a better system for how digital creative work gets done, basically.
And the way it works sounds, well, you called it elegantly simple yet powerful. Let's take the release form issue. Instead of those generic things, BentID does something different, like linking the release directly to the photo. How does that work? Cryptographically linked? What does that actually mean?
Right. So instead of one form for the whole shoot, BentID allows a release to be tied to each individual photo or video clip. Cryptographically linked means they embed a unique digital fingerprint. It's called a hash into the file's metadata, like mathematically unique to that specific image. That hash, along with the consent details, gets recorded securely, often on something like a blockchain, making it tamper-proof. So if you change even one pixel in that photo, the hash changes, the link breaks. The original consent doesn't apply to the altered version. It creates this undeniable, auditable link between this specific content and this specific consent. No more guessing what was approved.
Wow, okay. That kills the ambiguity right there.
Pretty much. And it gets better for the model, too. Transparency is key here. When content with a BentID release gets submitted, say, to a platform or agency that uses the system, the model receives an immediate notification, like a heads up. This is described as a simple but revolutionary feature. Suddenly, the model has a clear, real-time record. They see what content is being used, where, and under what terms they agreed to for that specific piece. It gives them genuine oversight and, frankly, peace of mind that traditional releases just can't offer. They have poof.
So if a dispute does come up later,
Yeah.
say about whether a specific photo was approved for a certain use, there's now this unassailable digital chain of consent, right? It just ends the he said, she said argument.
That's the goal. It provides concrete, verifiable proof for both sides. The photographer can show undeniable consent linked to the exact asset. The model has a clear record of what they agreed to. It takes the heat and confusion out of potential disputes and replaces it with, well, evidence. Builds trust because the facts are clear.
That makes a lot of sense.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, the legal conflicts we talked about, BentID's approach aims to solve that too. It lets photographers meet compliance rules like 2257 without having to become PII custodians. The system can handle the secure ID verification, maybe using secure, privacy-preserving methods, abstracting that risk away from the individual creator. So compliance is achieved, but without violating GDPR's principle. It's about holding sensitive data directly. And the models, they get that unprecedented control and transparency over their digital selves. It's trying to create a space where, as the source says, creativity can thrive without compromise, where legal risks don't stifle the art.
So we've walked through this really tangled web today. Global laws crashing into each other, US 2257 versus GDPR privacy. And the old ways of doing things, like generic model releases, just adding to the confusion and risk. But it's actually, well, quite encouraging to see how new ideas, new tech like BentID, are actively trying to cut through that knot, offering a path that seems clearer, safer, and fairer for both the people creating the images and the people in them.
Yeah, I think it really shows something important. These huge digital age dilemmas, legal, ethical, they can be tackled. It takes thoughtful design, using technology smartly, and keeping both compliance and individual rights front and center. It's really about building, or maybe rebuilding, trust in this massive, interconnected, creative world we live in now, making sure rules protect, not just obstruct.
Definitely. So as you're listening, maybe scrolling through your own feeds later today, seeing all that content, here's something to think about. How much control do you actually feel you have over your own digital image, your likeness online? And what level of transparency from everyone using images would make you feel more empowered, more secure in this age of constant sharing? What kind of hidden rules or, fine print might be shaping your digital world without you even realizing it? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.